Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live on this Wednesday night. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined.
I'm delighted. And I genuinely mean this. I know that you always say you're delighted. I am genuinely delighted. You can see this caretaker hosting business. I felt sort of a Graham Murray version. Didn't enjoy it. I'm glad you're here and don't ever take a holiday again.
If we can see your headstand, that'd be good. Graham Murray style. Keith and I are joined tonight by Record Sports Michael Gannon. Mick, how's it going?
I'm also thoroughly delighted, as always. These cheery faces in front of me.
This is a crack team in the Hotline Live tonight.
A crack what?
Sorry.
No need for that.
That's not what I mean.
Yeah. Smoking crack.
The only place for us to start, I think, Keith, is that we have an exclusive special guest tonight, not Mick.
Yeah. Well, again, don't speak in derogatory terms to my colleague, Michael. We're delighted.
I can't hear you, you know.
Yeah, a little earlier today, I spoke with former FA, English FA high flyer Adrian Bevington. Complicated and a fast-moving story, given that it seemed yesterday, the day before, and for a couple of weeks previous to that, that Jim Gillespie of St Mirren, the vice chairman there, was a shoo-in effectively for the CEO role at Rangers as a replacement for James Bisgrove. Now, bear in mind that this search has been going on for 4 months, so it was widely assumed that Rangers were at a very advanced stage. I have to tell you, the information I have is that and why I thought it was pretty much would be a done deal is because apparently Jim Gillespie was very much the preferred choice of Douglas Park and Graham Park. He's a Parks man, and I think very much it seemed it was a fait accompli. Now, obviously, news broke this morning that Jim Gillespie has withdrawn or has been withdrawn from the race, is no longer a live candidate. So now it is, well, who's next? And the story came out this morning that Adrian Bevington would be open to having this conversation with Rangers about the position. So we contacted Adrian and we had a chat.
Aye. Well, we've had quite a strong response to it as well. And before I get Mick's take two, let's hear what he had to say.
By lunchtime today, the name of Adrian Bevington starts surfacing. And I think it's been reported that you would be very open to having a conversation with the club about the position.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the most important thing before I go any further, Keith, is to make it very clear I am employed by a large football agency in Germany.
Yeah.
I've been working with for 2 years, and I'm very happy in the role that I am in with these people. And, you know, we're doing a lot of good work across the continent at the moment. Being asked a direct question about Rangers Football Club, and the genesis of this really comes from a conversation that took place on a radio show last week ahead of the Scotland-Poland game.
Yeah.
I was asked my opinion about the situation up at Ibrox at the moment, and I offered my thoughts on the requirements that I believe are needed to be the CEO of a club of that stature. Obviously, a club of Rangers. I've been in football 30 years now, Keith, and they are a huge club, a football institution with a global fan base. And, you know, of course, I would be always happy to have a conversation if they wanted to have a conversation with me.
Mm-hmm.
If that takes us anywhere, that's a different set of circumstances. And I also, it's important for myself to be extremely respectful to the people in office at Ibrox as well. You know, I'm not trying to call anything on with them, but would I be willing to have a conversation with them? Of course I would.
Have you reached out to them, Adrian, in any way?
Look, I do know one or two people in and around Rangers. I made some initial contact quite some time ago now, but I've not had any dialogue with Rangers with regards to, or from Rangers with regards to this position.
Right, okay. I mean, it's interesting. My information is that there might have been an initial reluctance on the Rangers side because of a previous encounter that you had? And I find this an odd one, because I think you were helping to introduce the American lady Kylie Fox, a potential investor, into a discussion with Rangers. I thought Rangers, for some reason, treated the whole thing in a very hostile manner, when, in fact, what you'd found there was a woman that was willing to invest in the region of £60 million into Rangers. Now, I have to tell you, Adrian, if day one in the role as chief executive, someone was able to bring in an investor with £60 million, I think that's not a bad start. It's not a first day at the office.
Well, I mean, what I would say there, Keith, is look, from anything that's gone on historically, has always been done with the best of intentions on my part.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing I've never been involved in is introducing anybody to any football club in a hostile manner.
Yeah.
You know, everything that I would do would always be worked in a professional way. I'm very big on building relationships and dealing with things in a calm and considered manner wherever possible. The situation that you're talking about 2 years ago, my role there was very much the person who was introducing one or two people, because this lady in particular was looking to bring investment into the European football market. Yeah. And these conversations happen with football clubs all over the world on a frequent basis. So look, that ship has long since sailed, as far as I'm aware, and I've no direct involvement in a relationship with the person concerned. This is a very different set of circumstances. It's not for me to say what anyone on the board at Rangers Football Club actually wants at this moment. What I would say is, for a club of the stature that it is, with the passionate fan base that it has, whichever direction they choose to go in, it's a huge job, and whoever comes in has to have a real good understanding of the industry. They must have a good football intelligence, business intelligence, and importantly, have a really strong network of people, both in the UK, in Scotland, obviously, but also internationally as well, I would suggest.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll quote you from, you mentioned a previous interview, Rangers Football Club should be able to attract someone who has the stature and the ability to lead from the front, but also have a real good understanding of how the industry works, and a great network of contacts and relationships with people right throughout the game in Scotland, but also at UEFA, the European Club Association. There are people within Celtic who have those relationships already, and Rangers should be expecting similar. Adrian, you're absolutely spot on in everything you said there, but it does sound to me as if you might be describing yourself.
Look, there are a lot of people out there who have that level of expertise within the football industry, who have a really good network across the European football community. You know, it's just really important, in my opinion, for a club like Rangers. When you compare Rangers, to Celtic at the moment, who are going very well, they're also very well represented in the European Club Association, as one example. And I think the ultimate aim for Rangers is to be certainly at the top table of every big organisation. And you asked me about myself there, and I don't want to come across as someone who is talking myself up too much. It's not really what I want.
No. Listen, we contacted you just to make that clear.
So obviously, I do have a lot of contacts across the game. I was a previous consultant for UEFA when I ran my own company many years ago. I was a member of the UEFA media committee at one point in time, and obviously I've got just because of my long-standing industry relationships, I've got a strong network there. But importantly, I think what people wouldn't necessarily understand and appreciate with myself is that from a Scottish point of view, I've been coming to football in Scotland for many years, and I watch the game frequently. And during that time, I've built up quite a good stable of contacts across the game there, whether they be people at the very top positions in football clubs or coaches, journalists, agents. You know, I've managed. I make it my business wherever I go in the world that I've got a good network, because that's how things get done.
Yeah.
In life generally.
Yeah. And one last thing, Adrian, before I'll let you get back to the beach. I mean, what is the sort of image down south of you know, how Rangers have handled things over the last while? Because as you say, Celtic seem to be, you know, streets ahead off the pitch just now as well as on it. Is there a feeling that it needs to be modernised a little bit, streamlined, and just made to be a little bit more professional?
I don't think outside of Scotland that you find that Rangers are microanalysed to the granular level that takes place in Scotland, and in particular in Glasgow. But for me, that's part of the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. You know, the passion and the, you know, the whole, you know, the scrutiny, the discussion, the debate is part of it. I think what you would say is if you discussed it with a lot of people in England, people are aware at the moment, obviously, that Celtic are performing more successfully than Rangers on the pitch. Mm-hmm. They may be aware of the issues around Ibrox and having to play at Hampden, obviously being knocked out of European club competition by Dynamo Kiev. But in the main, they still see and appreciate Rangers for being this unbelievably big football club that is, you know, historically so successful. And people's memories, you know, obviously I can't account for everyone who are maybe a bit younger than me, but people remember you know, it's not that long ago, apart from the recent Europa final, people remember the final in Manchester. They remember the great teams of Laudrup and Gascoigne and people like that. You know, Rangers it's still a great big football club. Mm-hmm.
Oh, brilliant, Adrian. Listen, I won't keep you any longer, but who knows? Maybe you and I can catch up for a coffee in Glasgow sometime soon.
I'll treat you to that, Keith. Don't worry about that.
Brilliant, mate.
So there you go. It's a name that's been bandied about a lot today, but it's the Hotline Live. It gets the exclusive.
When the big names talk, they talk to Hotline Live.
Before I bring
and you.
Before I bring Mick in, let's go to some of the comments, because we've had quite a strong reaction to Adrian's comments there. And I should say, if you're watching at home, get involved in the conversation. Robbie McClellan, my first question at the interview would be, why didn't you contact us privately to express an interest rather than announcing it to the press? That's a red flag right away.
Well, I'd stop you there. I mean, he said in the interview he has reached out to Rangers. Whether or not Rangers have taken him up on it is another thing entirely. And, you know, when the story came out today that he was open for talks with Rangers, obviously that's why we tracked him down. He was on holiday in Portugal, and he was happy to come and speak to us about it. I don't see a problem with that, to be honest.
Owen Smith is a bit more positive. He says, if Rangers could land someone like Adrian Bevington, it would be a great move. He understands business, football, has all-round knowledge, and wouldn't be a yes man to our despicable board.
Listen, do you know what? Good point. Good point. He wouldn't be a yes man. And when he talks there about having this network of contacts, he genuinely does. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a really well-connected guy. He's well respected in the corridors of power at UEFA. And I think he raises a really important point about, you know, Peter Lawwell's got a real presence in European football. He's at the top table when it comes to the European Club Association. You might think that's all just boring in politics, but it's not. Peter Lawwell has quite a big voice and a big influence amongst the decision makers at that level of the European game. And Rangers don't have a voice at all. Mm-hmm, yeah. And they haven't done for such a long time, because they've had paperweight executives who just don't count. So somebody like Adrian Bevington would certainly change the pace in terms of that conversation. There's no doubt about it.
But Mickey was, you know, he was in charge of, I think it's Club England at the FA for 5 years between 2010 and 2015. You know, was involved in employing people like Fabio Capello, Sven-Goran Eriksson, Steve McLaren. But, you know, he's undoubtedly a very big name, and I think Keith's probably right, and he says that his contact books would probably be something that Rangers could benefit from.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's an interesting kind of career. I mean, he started out as one of us lot. He was a journalist and PR at Middlesbrough.
Don't hold that against him.
This is all in the pro column. He's also a smart guy. Also, he was England PR guy for a while before he moved into the kind of operation side of things. He's also had roles. I think his recent years has all been in recruitment, hasn't he? He's head of recruitment at Middlesbrough for a couple of seasons. I don't think it went particularly well. He popped up at Hartlepool United as a director for a while when they were really struggling.
He was involved at Aston Villa as well, Mick, wasn't he?
He also had a role at Nottingham Forest, I'm led to believe, at some point as well. So I think he's been heavily involved in the recruitment side of things in the last kind of 5, 6, 7 years. So he has got us network of contacts, and he touched on that in the scouting side of things and club contacts and UEFA. He's certainly been around the block a good few times. Is he the guy for Rangers? Listen, he's got a decent enough CV as anyone, I would guess. It's a heck of a job, isn't it? Really, I mean,
it is a heck of a job.
I mean,
the one thing I'd say, Mick, is if you were to get Adrian Bevington's CV in front of you or Jim Gillespie's, I think Adrian Bevington's would win that one 9 times out of 10. So I found it a bit odd that Jim Gillespie, no harm intended. I found it a bit odd that he was sort of identified as the best in class for that position. Just as I found it a bit odd that who knew that James Bisgrove was the best in class for that position. Rangers actually had the best chief executive in Europe working inside just in a different department, and look how that turned out. I think the link to Douglas Park, Graham Park is clearly what fast-tracked Jim Gillespie into consideration. If I was looking at just, in terms of networking and in terms of experience in the game, I think that Adrian Bevington looks to me like a better candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get the sense that the Gillespie notion was floated, and the response, almost a backlash, hasn't there been in the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks on that one? Supporters looking for a bit of a name and experience in that environment, and that might have put a few folk off in the club and the man personally in that interim period. It's going to take somebody who's going to have to really, I mean, you look at the work required at Rangers. I mean, the problem they've got is that they're up against the Celtic team just now in club who are performing at the max. They're selling players £25 million plus. Yeah. In the Champions League, they've got probably 100 million. They're announcing their figures any day now, and it could be £100 million in the bank for all we know. I mean, they're making a turnover £100 million a year plus. So they're trying to take on that. Because the results in the picture obviously dictates the general mood music in the whole club. But to get to a point where they can compete, they need to drive up revenues. They need to get the fabled player trading model that everyone talks about. But that only works when you're winning games and winning leagues. Because people, if you're not playing particularly well, you're not going to sell players for £25 million. Correct. You need to be at that Champions League platform, and they need to be winning titles, they need to be doing well. So it's not an easy position for anyone coming in. I mean, somebody like Bevington has got experience. He's been in the firing line at big roles. But wouldn't be too scared to take that on. You got to say that. But it's got to be somebody with gravitas, experience, and a lot of nous to try and drag Rangers in a position that can be more competitive on and off the pitch.
And that is, I think, what would concern a lot of people when Jim Gillespie's name comes up, because I think a lot of people would look at that, and I would tend to be one of them, and think, oh, is this another Stuart Robertson, another guy that will just do what the board tells him to do? A minister without portfolio, no authority, no mandate to go and drive the changes that he believes to be necessary, because he's just there to effectively do what the board tells him to do. Yeah. Rangers don't need a chief executive like that. Rangers need somebody who's firm-minded, who can take a lead, who can drive, and who, will obviously have to answer to the board, but won't be guided by them. Someone who is his own man, who makes his own decisions. It is abundantly clear that board needs somebody who can drive it and lead it. And the last thing I think Rangers should be doing right now is appointing a yes man to the position. They need somebody that's going to come in and actually shake things up and streamline the whole club. And you can't do that if your first kind of priority is to do the bidding of the guys at the boardroom. It's not going to work. Rangers need somebody a lot stronger than that for the position.
Mark Fairfield, watching live on Facebook, says Rangers in such a mess that no one genuinely is going to risk their reputation on or off the park. The thing is that Adrian Bevington's come out and said he wants a conversation. Surely we can all agree that it's worth Rangers having the conversation with him.
But again, here's the odd thing, right? And we spoke about that in the interview. There does seem to be a reluctance on the Rangers side to engage or re-engage with Adrian Bevington because of what happened with Kyle Fox. But as I said to him in the interview, I find that remarkable. I find it remarkable. The whole Kyle Fox thing was just absurd. I mean, there was an American woman that came to the table with £60 million burning a hole in her handbag, and she was willing to invest that into a club that really needed the investment.
Badly, yeah.
And she was chased. Not only was she chased, I mean, they dragged her into court in America. It was ludicrous, a crazy way to behave. Now, granted, that was the previous regime under Douglas Park. I think that John Bennett was actually involved in the talks, but Douglas Park, for whatever reason, took it upon himself to say this was a hostile move and completely resisted it. So I don't understand, even all that aside, all the history aside, if there's a question mark over Adrian Bevington, his part and all that, well, why would that be? This is a guy that all he did was bring that businesswoman to the table and allow Rangers to start a conversation. As I said, if you're a chief executive and in day one you bring somebody to the table that's got 60 million quid that you want to invest in the club, I would say right now Rangers would bite your hand off for it.
Absolutely.
So for me, that's a tick in his box as opposed to a negative.
Would you have the conversation, Mick, if you were on the current Rangers board?
Listen, it depends on what kind of structure you're going to go for. Are you wanting a CEO who's going to be right in the thick of it and controlling everything from youth to transfers to the structure of the club, you name it? Or do you have a guy who is more in the background and working commercially and having a sporting director or director of football? Sometimes that can work as well, because not every club's got the big front-facing CEO. Listen, Celtic don't have one. Celtic CEO, but you don't see him from one year to the next. It pops up at the AGM every year. That's
a rather experienced chairman.
They do have that. So that's the case. And Rangers, well, listen, Rangers chairman's been there a long time now as well. Whether or not he's done a decent job in recent years, I don't know. You can argue that themselves, but it's a figure. Somebody has to be, like I say, a figurehead character. You touched on the Celtic chairman, right? There's a CEO who was the face of the club for 20 years, who was out batting the club's case in Europe and you name it, defending the club at home and abroad. Rangers haven't had that kind of experience and that kind of gravitas and that kind of role. And these guys there's not abundance of them about, do you know what I mean? Listen, it's a well-paid job, so there'll be plenty of interest in it. But it's not like going out and buying a right back. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's not that kind of appointment. So sometimes these guys that might come from a slightly left field, and you think, is it going to work? And it does work. But it's a key appointment for Rangers because they need. And one thing I keep going back to the Rangers board, they need somebody with a bit of football knowledge in that boardroom. It's something Graham Souness keeps talking about, isn't it? Yeah. You need somebody with a bit of football knowledge. So bringing in a lawyer or a guy who's not been in the football background or not a sporting background, I don't think it's going to cut it for Rangers. They need somebody with football knowledge in that boardroom.
They need to try, and this would be easier said than done, to find the equivalent of a Peter Lawwell. Because Peter Lawwell was such a leader, such a big beast. And Rangers have all through, I think, Martin Bain went up against Peter Lawwell back in the day. And I think there was a good, healthy respect between both guys. But I think since then, there's been a procession of guys in there that are just not up to the job. And I think that Peter Lawwell looks across the city and he'll be quite content about that. He's when Stuart Robertson was in there, that's a no contest. I mean, I was just a guy that was there to, shuffle papers around the desk. He wasn't making, he couldn't make a decision what underpants to wear in the morning unless he was told by the board.
Another exclusive there.
Yeah, well, you can have that. But they need a leader of men. They desperately need a leader of men. And you can see that the board is tying itself up in knots and has been over a period of time. The stadium debacle, appointing Bisgrove, Michael Beale, all these lists of kind of problems. it all comes from a lack of experience, a lack of nous, and what they really need for me, these guys that are investing. And by the way, they really are well-meaning. They're hand over fist to try and invest in the club and make things better. But they just need somebody to fall in behind, and that person needs to be a strong, bold, savvy CEO, someone who can fight the battles for them. So yeah, Mick says it, absolutely key position.
Time will tell if it is Adrian Bevington, I guess.
A lot of guys in this role in the modern game, you have to be careful because the game is now littered with absolute BS merchants, by the way.
Yeah.
You can sell themselves and talk a good game, but it comes to having a clue. And by the way, we know that the game is flooded with these kind of guys.
The Rangers have just lost one of them.
Well, so they have to be careful not to fall for that nonsense either. So listen, I think it's a really difficult. I can understand why it's taken a bit of time. Obviously, the reason was apparently because the stadium issue had detracted from the CEO search, but it's something that needs to be fixed, and now pretty soon, don't they?
Well, I think John Bennett said, Mike, that what he wanted to do was fix the stadium debacle before bringing in a chief executive, so that the chief executive wasn't hamstrung with something like that. So John Bennett has taken personal charge of sort of taking care of the mess that James Bisgrove left behind. Now, you might think that was the wrong thing to do. You may say it's the right thing to do. But I think what he's trying to do by taking personal responsibility for that is to give the incoming chief executive more of a clean slate. I think that makes sense. Whether or not it makes sense for John Bennett is another thing, because, it's a guy that should be in retirement right now. He's fulfilling, I don't know how many roles at the club. So I think he could do with a help. And that's why I keep coming back to it. It has to be a really strong character, and it has to be somebody that the board can say, do you know what, you lead us and we'll fall in behind.
Right. Look, time is getting on, obviously, but whilst we're on Rangers, we've had a really strong response on Record Sports social media channels to Philippe Clement's Q&A last night at Edmiston House. I'll throw a couple of comments at you, see what you make of it. Robert Livingston, what absolute garbage from Clement's mouth when he says, some new players need 3 to 6 months to come through. When will fans wake up to this rubbish? There's plenty of quality professional players available right now in the SPFL who could walk into the Gers side and hit the ground running. The fans know who they are. Liam Gordon follows it up with, didn't hear these excuses from Ange when he was rebuilding. He got his head down and won 2 trophies in his first season. And Rob Jones, who's a regular Rangers fan on the Hotline Live, amazed there are still blind supporters worshipping Clement, waving banners for a manager who's lost Celtic 5 times and crashed through the Champions League qualifiers. It's baffling. That Q&A last night, just to me, the timing of it is just bizarre.
But do you know what? You don't need to be a rocket scientist to work that one.
Right, exactly.
We were saying weeks ago, you can't believe that they've scheduled this for after the first, a week after the first Old Firm game of the season, because there's every chance by that point you're going to have to put chicken wire up in front of the stage, because the Rangers fans, there was always a better chance than not that they were going to be in a state of uproar after the first Old Firm. Their team was going to be languishing behind Celtic at the top of the league. They were out of the Champions League qualifiers. Whoever came up with that idea needs taken away, led out the front door and told never to come back again. It's absolute madness.
It goes back to the CEO thing we're saying. You need something,
And what was it? What were they charging punters?
£40. £40 a ticket,
I cannot begin to fathom what genius come up with that idea.
Live on Facebook, Davy, I'm not going to try and pronounce that second name, Davy. So 7 out of the 11 Clement started at Parkhead were established team members. Tierney and Proper are meant to be experienced leaders. Clement has taken them backwards. Mick, I know Rangers gave him a new contract. They're definitely trying to back Clement, but already the pressure's kind of seems to be mounting on him.
Yeah, listen, this event last night was a stinker for Philippe Clement. This has been the book for months, right? And the weeks kept ticking on towards it. It's probably, oh no, this is a nightmare. It really is. Absolute stinky nappy to handle. And he survived it. Listen, you know what these things are like? It's a bit like the AGMs. You always think, oh, they're going to get fried by the fans and that stuff. And the questions are a wee bit, they get vetted as well, and they're a wee bit under arm. underarm questions. So I actually felt for him a wee bit last night, because that's the last thing he wanted to do, is face the masses at this point in time, when it's not been going that great. So yeah, the real questions weren't asked last night, as we knew they wouldn't be anyway. So they didn't get the answers they wanted to hear, and the ones they did get to hear probably aren't really hitting home, because again, if he's winning games, he can say what he likes. He can stand on the stage and juggle for an hour and a half and he'll get a cheer. He's winning games. So it doesn't really matter. But because it's 5 points behind, lost to Celtic again, out of the European Champions League, the pressure is on. He's been let down badly. He's had to downsize his squad, had to cut the budgets to clear the wage bill. He's not a very good transfer window. He's been left with a squad that was unbalanced, lacking in depth and ability. He's on to plums at the moment, and he is firefighting. I think he has made some strange decisions, and I think it hasn't been perfect either. I mean, a great start, obviously, and it got off the rails kind of big time end of last season. It's never really got back on them again. His recent run of results, going back into the end of last season, isn't good enough for Rangers manager, no matter what the situation is.
So these results are a horror story, man.
Exactly. I mean, it's not good. So he's going to have to get this. He's going to have to get some momentum, get a run of results together, and try and win back some of the sports. People are losing a wee bit of faith, and they start questioning every decision that he's making. Substitutions get questioned. Chucking in Agamani against Celtic for a debut. He didn't play the week before when they won 6-0. Describing that game as the best result in 4 years. Maybe casually forgetting getting to European final and beating Borussia Dortmund and all that. There's some big missteps he's made in recent months. That's pressure. That's just because the pressure's been piled on him, and it sends a lot of people to Wally. But he needs a run of games, a run of wins, a run of good performances to take a bit of that pressure off. Otherwise, it's going to come thick and fast. He's got some hard fixtures coming up as well. The European games aren't going to be easy. We saw what happened to Gio Van Bronckhorst in Europe. When he struggled in Europe, that fed into the league. Took in an Old Firm defeat, and his goose was cooked as well. So he's got a backing of his board, and he's got a long-term contract, but he's going to have to start producing the goods and quickly. And unfortunately, all other problems we talk about aren't going to cut it as excuses. Just aren't.
Mm-hmm. Across the city, guys, Alistair Johnston, who has developed into a very important player for Celtic. There's a suggestion that he might be a doubt to face Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League qualifier next week. Joe McCabe has written in saying, I honestly think Alistair Johnston is Celtic's true unsung hero. He's brilliant week after week and has really improved when attacking. I just hope English clubs don't notice. And this comment from Mark Nicholas Moore, which made me chuckle. I knew Celtic players would be a target during the international games. You know how good this Celtic team is, and they're trying to stop us in the Champions League.
Who are Canada playing against?
It's a conspiracy. The Canadian national team.
I agree with, was it Joe that talks about Alistair Johnston as being, an unsung hero. I don't know if he's underrated. I think the Celtic fans know how good he is, but yes, for me, week after week, the guy churns in an 8 out of 10 performance, occasionally a 9. Yeah. I think he's been absolutely rock solid defensively, but he's so good at getting forward. Many times have you seen that goal that Celtic's opener against Rangers with Alistair Johnston getting down the overlap, the cut across the face of goal, Maida bundles in at the back post. Alistair Johnston has been an absolutely sensational signing for Celtic. Right. And yes, it follows automatically there will be a concern. Some club down south will need a right back at some point, and Alistair Johnston's stats will be incredible. So if he goes into the Champions League, let's hope this injury isn't too serious. If he plays the way he's been playing and takes that form into the Champions League, it is only a matter of time until somebody comes sniffing, because that's the way it works.
And no harm to Anthony Ralston, Nick, but Brendan Rodgers will be desperate for Alistair Johnston to be available for that Champions League opener, you'd have thought. Yeah.
Listen, I thought Anthony Ralston, I know he gave me a penalty kick for Scotland to win the games. I thought he actually played quite well in the game. Especially against Portugal. I think after the first 10-15 minutes, I thought he was really good. And he won't let anyone down at any point in time, especially domestically. He'll be absolutely fine. Champions League, they want Johnston back.
Mick,
Yeah.
that was a bit of, we talked about Peter Lawwell versus Stuart Robertson. I'm afraid that was a catchweight contest. Leal against Anthony Ralston.
I thought he done all right, Keith. I
I
genuinely thought he done all right.
I think he stuck to it absolutely manfully.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased for him. But wow, I mean, geez, that boy was rapid.
guy.
I mean, that boy, that what a player that is.
I thought he handled them all right. I thought he done okay.
I agree. I
I
thought
think
he did.
you know what you get with Anthony Ralston. He's honest as day is long. I think he'll be fine most weeks in Scotland anyway. But Johnston's a funny one. I actually think he's been. This is probably not the right phrase, but he's been Brendan Rodgered. I think he's. That's the guy who.
You're right, Mick. That wasn't the right phrase.
I seen I had that in my head coming out of my mouth. I thought, I'm not sure that's going to work.
He's been Rodgered.
I better qualify this. What I mean is, when he first came in, I thought he won over the punters quite quickly. His debut was in an Old Firm game as well. Ibrox done really well. But I thought early part of last season, the first half of last season, I thought he was a bit of a downgrade on Juranovic. And I thought it was more and more noticeable. It took him up to about December to get his first assist last season. I thought Celtic were struggling in attacking sense, doing that flying. I thought he wasn't quite cutting it. Towards the end of last season, he clicked into gear. And this season, he's become a really good attacking fullback now. He's involved in everything. I mean, look at the game against Rangers the other week. Sets up a goal, involved in countless chances as well.
Yeah.
So he's got that, like you mentioned, that rock solid defensive. He loves a tackle. He's a strong boy. He gets stuck in. He knows his job first and foremost. But I think he's added a lot to his game. He's underlapping, overlapping. I think he has been given the full Brendan Rodgers treatment, which is what I meant with that statement earlier on. And the way he's going, a bit like Matt O'Reilly, I think you could see him being another £20 million plus player at some point. But he's going to be vital, especially to Europe, because he can defend as well. And he's added this attacking part of his game. So I can understand why he's become a bit of a favourite.
Do you know what he's also got? He's got that confidence.
Aye.
I was going to say it's not an arrogance, because he's not an arrogant boy at all. He's actually a really, really nice guy. So there's not a hint of arrogance about him, but it's just supreme confidence. He believes in his own ability to go onto the pitch. I don't think he looks at, we talk about James Tavernier looking at Maida and not being able to sleep for 3 nights before the game. That's not going to happen with Alistair Johnston. He believes in his own ability. And rightly so, because I think he's a terrific right back. I'm
sure the Celtic support will be hoping that some of the new players that have been brought in can get Brendan Rodgers as well. Before we
add this phrase, I think it's going to
let's turn it into Brodge.
Before we finish, guys, I need to mention Jimmy Thelin, who was today crowned Premiership Manager of the Month for August. The Aberdeen boss, after a run of 4 Premiership games. 4 Premiership wins, 8 goals scored, only 2 conceded. They're at home to Motherwell at the weekend. You wouldn't bet against them making it 5.
Well, usually when you get the Manager of the Month, you lose your next game.
Oh, really? Is that the thing?
The
kiss of death.
But having said that, I've spoken a few times now about him. I was excited about his appointment. I really believed that this might be the first one since Derek McInnes that they've really got right. I'm excited by his philosophy, the way he talks, the way he wants the game to be played, and I expected big things, but this has been dream stuff.
Aye. Is it 9 wins in all competitions?
Yeah,
9 wins in a row.
I mean, so he just can't have been any better. He hasn't genuinely put a foot wrong, and it's no wonder there's such excitement in the North East. I think they've got a real ticket in this guy.
I can't wait, Mick.
He's played nothing yet. He's not put that game yet. We should have started life at Aberdeen.
but by Aberdeen standard, Mick, this is quite incredible.
It is. Listen, you can't fault the start. He's made 9 out of 9. But it is, I mean, joking aside, he's now in for a different kind of spell, because they've got coming up, they've got the Spartans in the Cup, I think, as well. But they've got Dundee, Hearts, Celtic, Dundee United, Rangers, Hibs, Dundee again, St Mirren, Hearts, Celtic. That's the next 10 games. So now we'll find out. If it's real. Great start, great foundation. He's won over the punters immediately. Now the task is to maintain it until the start of December, because he's got a really tough spell coming up.
But it's exciting, Mick, isn't it, to have a
very
strong...
much so.
Nobody knows more than you, because you used to work up there. But to have a strong exciting, energetic Aberdeen side, punching its weight. That our league is crying out for it, and always has been crying out for it. And this is the first time in a long time that it feels as if it could happen.
So that's the thing. Aberdeen, the mood in Aberdeen, the danger up there was apathy. It's set in. I mean, the part of gone from fuming to just fed up with the whole thing altogether. So he's come back. He's won them over quick, and he's got the place kind of buzzing again. But I said there's some big games coming up. I keep thinking that one. I think it's Halloween or the weekend of Halloween is Rangers of Pataudry. I mean, that's one is unmissable, isn't it? That's going to be the real last test. That's going to be a cracker. If they keep the form up to that point, that's box office big time. It's good to see. I mean, we need their big clubs doing well to make it a stronger league. I mean, too often, Aberdeen and Hibs last year were honking. It doesn't help the league either. You want your teams your big city teams to be doing well, making it a tough league. And that means that it can help make it competitive as well. You think Celtic just now might run away with it the way it's been going so far, but you want these teams to be doing well and at least causing a problem, make it interesting for a start.
See, with Rangers at Tannadice at the weekend, Dundee United in good form, Aberdeen at home to Motherwell. I would honestly think, I wouldn't be very surprised if by Monday Aberdeen are at 7 or 8 points ahead of Rangers.
Yeah, which
is pretty remarkable at this stage of the season.
And Mick mentions that game Halloween.
Aye.
Could you imagine Rangers were trailing Aberdeen by a significant number of points and then went up there and lost? I think at that point Philippe Clement would be doing very well to survive.
Aye, I agree. Listen, I think that brings us to the end of tonight's Hotline Live. I should say if you contributed in the comment section, we really appreciate it. And we will be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Mick, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, guys. See you later on.
And we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, Mick.